What up, dude bros? I'm Frank. Yo, check this out. Nerf Rival Pilot. Spring-powered, break-action, single-shot blaster in the Rival series. Let's get into it. Included is the blaster, 2 blue balls in the instructions. External overview of the Pilot, starting up with the front. There's no in-strike barrel lug. Above that, we have the front iron sight, which corresponds with the rear iron sight. Interestingly, the front sight is just a standard orange sight, instead of the cool yellow-green sight they put in other blasters in this series. Down to the priming handle, this is a spring-powered blaster with a T-style priming handle to prime. You do that, and upon priming, the brake action system opens up automatically. And this is how you load the blaster, so you can get a Nerf Rival round and put it right on in there. After you load it up, you pull the barrel up and then push it back a little bit. Now you're loaded and primed, ready to fire once. This brake action system works pretty well, and it is pretty fun to use. And an advantage of this system is this barrel is so exposed that you can actually double load very easily. It's like it's asking for it. You can load in 2 and even 3 rounds per shot if you want to. Performance is pretty bad with 3, but 2 is usable. I'll show you that in the firing demo. So pretty fun loading system. Moving down to the trigger pull is pretty standard. This blaster, of course, does not have slam fire. And under the trigger, on the trigger guard right here, we have a trigger safety. In the forward position, it mechanically prevents you from pulling the trigger. Then you move it back and you're able to fire. In the rear of the blaster right here, we have a small lanyard mount. And now moving down to the grip. Overall, this is a pretty comfortable grip. It's much thicker and girthier than a lot of Nerf Elite blasters on the market. It's more similar to other Rival blasters on the market, which are a little thicker and a little more adult friendly. So overall, very comfortable grip if you're an older, more mature human. And a few more details on the priming handle. It's a T-style priming handle that's very easy to grip onto, and it's going front to back instead of sticking out, so the side profile of this blaster is much thinner. And the prime strength required is in line with other Nerf Rival blasters, but of course it is harder to prime this one than a lot of Nerf Elite blasters on the market. And even though this action does release the brake action, it's still a very smooth prime. So overall, good, comfortable priming handle. That's an external overview of the Pilot. It's a pretty simple blaster to use. Quick notes on ergonomics. Overall, this one feels really good in the hands. The grip is oversized. It's very chonky. It reminds me of the Apollo grip. The balance and how this one feels in the hand is overall very good. It's a fun one to use and handle. So that's it for the overview. Now I'll show you the blaster firing. Shooting blue Nerf Accu Rival rounds. Now loading 2 at once. Overall play experience on this one was pretty good. I did not experience any jams and malfunctions. You can shotgun load with ease, although when you shotgun load, one of the rounds shoots pretty hard, close to the initial velocity of just shooting one at a time. But that second round really doesn't shoot very hard, which could be useful as a shotgun to have one shoot a little further than the other, but they don't shoot at the same velocity. But no jams or malfunctions, so overall positive play experience. To compare this one to others, I put it up on my chronograph. And with blue Accu Rival rounds and normal yellow Rival rounds, I achieved an average velocity of 83 feet per second, which is a little slower than what we can expect from most Rival primaries, but as a single shot emergency pistol in the Rival series, it shoots fine. That's the objective information I can provide on this blaster. Now to my personal opinion. Overall, I'm pleasantly surprised with the Pilot. This one's a pretty fun one to use. I really quite enjoy using the brake action system. It works pretty smoothly and it's fun to load. It's really quite satisfying to load this brake action system in a way that I can't really tell you why. It's just fun and smooth to load up and shoot. It just feels good in the hands. This brake action system does work differently than other brake action systems I've used though, because to close the system, you have to pivot it up and then push it back. There's actually 2 steps to closing the breech, which is a little weird. Not a big deal once you get used to it, but if you loan this to a friend, make sure you make that clear just so they know what they're doing. But this is a fun little Plinker, and it's fun to shoot 2 balls at once with no mods, and you don't have to use the unjam button to override the breech. It's like it's designed to shotgun load, which is really fun. So overall opinion of the Pilot is surprisingly positive. Now a quick comparison of the Rival Knockout, because it's a very similar platform. Both of these are spring-powered single-shot blasters in the Rival series. Also similar is their size and their grip. Both of these feel very similar to each other. Major differences in my opinions: first, the Knockout is a breech loader, which if you're only shooting one at a time, this is is actually a little bit faster to load. However, to double load this, it is a little bit more cumbersome, and it's definitely not as fun to double load as the Pilot. So the Knockout might be a little bit faster in rate of fire, but I think using the Pilot is a little bit more fun. And the next big difference is the priming handle. Now, priming this one out is essentially the same action, but the Pilot's priming handle stays out. Compared to the Knockout, you prime this one and then push it back in. So in primed, chambered, ready to fire form, the Knockout is much smaller. So if you're keeping it as an emergency backup or in your pocket, primed, ready to pull out and shoot really quickly, the Knockout would be a little bit better for that application because it's smaller. Having the priming arm stick out is just asking for it to snag on stuff, which could get annoying. If you're plinking and target shooting, that difference is not that big a deal. It's only a concern if you're putting it into a cargo pocket or using it tactically as a secondary. So which would I choose? If I'm target shooting and plinking and shooting just for fun, I'll definitely be using the Pilot. It's a better emotional response to use the break action. Loading the system is more fun than the breach. And having a protruding priming arm's not a big deal if I'm just target shooting and plinking. That's not in my way at all. It's only a concern if you're tucking it into a holster and then you don't want it protruding. So for target shooting and plinking, Pilot all the way. So when would the Knockout be more useful if you want to stow it in tactical gear as a secondary? However, considering how big the Knockout is, being a single shot blaster, you're so close to the overall size of a Chronos, I would go ahead and use a Chronos. When I play Rival Wars, if I'm going to use a pistol on my hip, it's a Chronos every time. So the Knockout is technically better than the Pilot for that application, but by the time you go to that, you might as well go buy a Chronos. How many times on this channel have I said go buy a Chronos? At least 100. So that's a quick comparison of the Knockout and the Pilot. So now generally to the question to buy or not to buy for the Pilot. I would recommend this one to plinkers and target shooters who are on a budget and just want a simple single shot blaster to derp around with. Sometimes having a really high capacity kind of ruins the fun and prevents you from really savoring each and every shot. Having a single shot blaster really makes you pay attention to every trigger pull, and it makes it way more satisfying when you do hit the target. It's just more fun when you know you have to make this shot count because you don't have a magazine of 5 like if you're using a Chronos. And it is fun to have the ability to shotgun load. You can load in 2 or 3. You don't have to modify it. You don't have to use the unjam button and override that lock like you would on most other blasters. It really is like Hasbro wants us to shotgun load this thing. So to buy or not to buy, do you want a fun to use break action blaster that shoots rival rounds? If so, consider this one. It's pretty affordable and it's fun to use for target shooting and plinking. But hopefully I've laid out everything you need to make an educated purchase decision on your own. If you'd like to buy one of these, I'll put a buy link in the description box below. That concludes this video review. Thanks so much for watching, bros, and as always, stay tactical.